In the last video for this class session, we're going to go to our Adler and Van Dorn book and finish off talking about analytical reading. Okay, but before I go on to those additional rules, I want us to stop and read the Baylis article, and I want you to apply your inspectional reading strategies that you've learned to Baylis. So remember, that's looking at titles and headers and maybe the introduction and conclusion, and just seeing what can you learn about Baylis's main arguments before reading the entire article. Now, this article will be one of the sources you use in assignment 2, most likely. All right, so I would go ahead and pause the video and complete this activity, and you'll find it right here at the beginning in your worksheet right under Adler and Van Dorn. All right, so now that you've read the Baylis article, I want us to review a little bit the analytical reading strategies 1 through 5 that we did last week, because this week we're going to cover strategies 6 through 11. So remember, strategy 1 was you must know what kind of book you're reading. That was either practical or theoretical. You should state the unity of the whole book in a single sentence. For number 3, set forth the major parts of the book and show how they are organized and how they relate to each other. So think of that as an outline. And then 4th, find out what the author's problems were. And 5th, find the important words and through them come to terms with the author. So basically identify what are the key words that an author's using, and what are the definitions behind those words. So again, I have another recommended activity. I recommend that you pause right now, read the Baylis article, and apply these rules 1 through 5 to that reading. And that is actually part of your journal entry for this upcoming week that's due Sunday. So if you have the time, I really recommend completing this and then coming back. All right, so whether you did that activity or not, let's start with Rule 6. Rule 6 in analytical reading is mark the most important sentences in a book and discover the propositions they contain. All right, so a proposition is a proposal that something is true. Okay, Adler and Van Dorn define it this way. A proposition in a book is also a declaration. It is an expression of the author's judgment about something. Okay, so a book can contain multiple propositions. All right, so how do you find a proposition? A proposition is usually the main idea or related to it. Okay, propositions are the answers to questions. Propositions without reasons or evidence equal personal opinion. And then propositions can be signaled with phrases like blank is because of blank, or if X is blank, then Y. Okay, so there's a little bit of cause and effect going on there. All right, here's some other tips with understanding propositions. How to find them. Look for sentences where the author explains his reasoning, beliefs, positions, or the words that they're using. If you've identified the key terms in a book, these sentences will usually guide you to those propositions. So remember, terms are those specific use of the word and how to define it. Look for any sentences the author has marked topographically. Maybe they've italicized it or bolded or made it stand out in some other way. And then sometimes we can identify the propositions, but understanding them takes a little more work. So here are some tips. Restate the proposition in your own words. If the proposition is long or complex, can you reword it into one sentence? And then find a personal connection to the proposition. Can you relate to this? Do you have personal experience that you can draw on? So here are some example statements of what a proposition will look like. And these come from the Baylis article, and both are right on the first page. To understand a character in a narrative literature, the reader must know how that person fits into the message of the story in view of the author's ethnical standard. All right, so Baylis is making a statement there that he's wanting us to agree with, and this statement is kind of the premise by which he's going to make a lot of other statements in his article. All right, here's another proposition. Yet not to have a major character in a negative contrast to the positive hero is unknown in any of the other narratives in the Bible. Thus, the claim that there is no negative main character in the book of Ruth is somewhat suspect. Okay, so what I want you to do in your worksheet is, what is Baylis claiming to be true in these statements? He's assuming that something's true. All right, and then in your own words, can you restate each of these propositions? How would you word them? So go ahead, pause the video, complete the worksheet, and then come back. All right, analytical rule 7, okay? If you can find the paragraphs in a book that state its important arguments, but if the arguments are not thus expressed, your task is to construct them by taking a sentence from this paragraph and one from that until you have gathered together the sequence of sentences that state the propositions that compose the argument. Okay, in a nutshell, what Adler and Van Doren are saying is you should be able to see from the outline of the book how all the different propositions and be able to summarize those propositions into a cohesive argument. Okay, so you could almost, going through maybe Baylis's article, find what are the key propositions in each section of the article, and then identify like the main propositions, and then summarize all those propositions together in one sentence that makes the main argument of the entire essay. Okay, if you need an example of what this kind of looks like and how this could be demonstrated, you can actually find kind of a summary of all the propositions in Baylis's article. It's in the very back paragraph called the summary. It's on the last page of his article. And that first paragraph in the summary gives you an idea of what number 7 should look like. So to help you identify the different propositions, what I recommend doing is going through Baylis's article and trying to find a key proposition in each of the sections. So you should have at least 3 key propositions in Baylis's article, maybe more. Don't get too carried away with this. And then what I want you to do is kind of see if you can summarize all of these propositions together into 1, maybe 2 sentences, okay? So go ahead, pause the video, complete this activity, and then come back. All right, rule number 8. Find what the author's solutions are. Okay, so this is kind of the bookend to rule number 4, which was find out what the author's problems are. So if you did the journal entries, which was those first 5 analytical rules on Baylis, this will really help you do this activity in the class. So here's how you can kind of apply Rule 8, is by answering these questions. Which of the problems that the author tried to solve did he succeed in solving? In the course of solving these, did he raise new problems? And of the problems that he failed to solve, old or new, which did the author himself know he had failed on? Okay, so to answer these questions, you're first going to have to ask yourself, what was Baylis's problem? What was he trying to solve? So go ahead and pause the video and try to answer these questions in your summary. All right, we're almost done with the analytical reading rules. I'm going to lump rules 9 through 11 together because they all have to deal with essentially the same thing. And that's how do you respond to and treat an author of a text, okay? Basically, these rules have to do with respecting the author. So for Rule 9, you must be able to say with reasonable certainty, I understand what the author is saying, before you can say any one of the following things. I disagree with the author, I agree with the author, or I suspend judgment. Okay, so you first must understand what the author is saying and what his or her arguments are. For number 10, when you disagree, do so reasonably and not disputatiously or contentiously. So basically, this is just saying don't be unreasonable with it, right? Maybe confine your disagreement to what is actually written in the article and not some other aspect of the author or the topic that was not addressed in the article. Number 11, respect the difference between knowledge and mere personal opinion by giving reasons for any critical judgments you make. All right, so back up your reason for disagreeing with the author with some evidence. All right, that helps it not be just mere personal opinion. And respect that maybe when the author too, when they're differentiating between giving their evidence and their claims, and when they're just acknowledging that they're giving their personal opinion. Okay. All right, so you're going to be applying these 3 rules in the discussion form for this week when you're asked to respond to Baylis's article and state whether you agree with it or disagree with it. So I will be looking for these and how well do you respectfully respond to Baylis. All right, lastly, as a concluding activity, I want you to summarize in your own words analytical reading rules 6 through 11, okay? So in your worksheet, you'll find a space to do this. It'll be right here, and it'll be the last entry that you have in the worksheet.